Hello, I'm Lucy from In the Midst of Madness, and today's vlog is going to be a bit different from normal because it's scripted, which is something I've never done before, but I didn't know how else to get started with vlogging again and say everything I needed to say without leaving bits out or stumbling over my words, so I've done this. The beginning of this may sound a bit dramatic and cryptic, but the whole thing won't be. I've got a lot of stuff to explain and it's difficult to do that succinctly. I've never wanted to use scripts because my face and voice don't do what I want them to do when I'm reading things out, and it feels very stilted and unnatural for me, but I'm hoping you'll bear with me as this is a one-off. So a bit of background is that I've not vlogged for over 18 months because of something that happened last year, and I've not felt able to talk about it, but I also didn't feel able to just move on and vlog about other stuff because this situation affected me so much. The only way I've been able to see of moving forwards is to go through explaining this now, and then I'm hoping I'll regain some of my confidence and be able to vlog more regularly again, because I can't tell you how much I've missed it and all of you. I started therapy in February last year, 2022, and thought I'd found a therapist who was a good match for me, and we got started unpacking all of the issues that have led to me becoming agoraphobic. Unfortunately, in beginning this process, I quickly became incredibly overwhelmed to the point of feeling suicidal, as bad memory after bad memory came flooding back to me with no coping strategies to speak of. It was horrible. I recorded and posted 2 vlogs about this in April and May last year, explaining how challenging I was finding it and how frustrated I was that I was feeling so bad. I thought nothing more of this. I'd mentioned to my therapist in our introductory session that I'm a mental health advocate and that I post about my experiences on social media and my blog, and nothing had been said about it. Fast forward to June last year, and I mentioned in a session that I'd found someone's reaction to the May vlog quite challenging, because it felt quite dismissive, as I'd said I was feeling really bad and wasn't making progress, and they'd said they thought I had. Again, I thought nothing of this. Our session ended and I went for a nap because I was exhausted. I was woken up by a phone call from my therapist. I was completely confused and disorientated and asked what was going on. She said we needed to talk. I was instantly incredibly stressed and trying to work out what on earth we could possibly need to talk about when we'd only just finished a session. She said she'd watched my video and obviously we needed to talk. I had no idea what video she was talking about or what I could possibly have done that would warrant this phone call. Most of the rest of it is a blur. Unfortunately, I don't concentrate or remember well when I'm anxious, and it sounded like I was being told off, so I only remember sections of the 20-minute phone call. The things that most stick out to me are that she said that she needed to feel safe and not constantly be worrying about everything she said being posted on the internet, that she needed to think about her reputation and that I could jeopardise that, and that she didn't realise she was making me worse, and that's completely unethical. I was completely stunned and horrified. I couldn't remember what I'd said in the video she was referring to, but I couldn't believe that I'd have said anything to identify her, let alone anything that would ever cause damage to her reputation. At the time, I held her in extremely high regard and blamed her for absolutely none of the reasons I was struggling, so I didn't understand what was going on. I also couldn't understand why me feeling worse seemed to be a surprise to her when 2 weeks previously she'd experienced countertransference and reportedly felt pretty terrible for 2 days, and asked me if her descriptions of how I'd been feeling were accurate, and I'd said they absolutely were. I asked why she watched it, and she said it was to try and help me, and that it was public, so it wasn't against ethics guidelines, and she hadn't done anything wrong. I remember trying to work out how she'd have found it, and realising she must have just Googled me, and I had no idea what else might have come up or what else she might have seen at the same time. After a while, she seemed to calm down after listening to my reassurances that I didn't believe that she was behaving unethically by treating me, that therapy had made me worse, but that wasn't her fault. It was just the process of realising quite how much trauma I had. It would have happened with anyone, and finally promising that until I was given permission, I'd share nothing more about therapy with her online. She then asked how I was feeling because she knows I don't like conflict, which isn't a fair statement, but I just said that I was feeling very stunned and that it had sounded like she was going to sack me as a client. She quickly replied, "Did I say that?" And I said, "No, but when you're saying that something I've done is making you feel unsafe, and you've called me between sessions because it's so important to talk about, I wasn't exactly expecting you to want to work with me anymore. She said that wasn't the case, and we worked out a 6-week plan and agreed to revisit this after that. We never revisited it. The whole of the following week, I was in bits. I was so confused and felt all sorts of feelings, none of which I had any coping strategies to deal with. The first thing I did when she got off the phone was find the video and watch the whole thing back. One of the longest 26 minutes of my life. I'm sorry to all of you who watch these. Believe it or not, I do try to be concise. I got to the end of the video and was even more confused. I even checked the transcript of it. I mentioned the word therapist 3 times and never say that she'd made me worse, just that therapy is very hard and I'm worse because of all of the things that I've been through, and that it's really hard to feel so bad and to try and be patient through that. Something that was regularly picked up on in our sessions, to the point where I tried desperately to bury any suggestion of speeding up, wanting to improve, or wanting to feel better, because it all just led to us doing less, and me feeling criticised for wanting more and not being patient enough. I was even told she wouldn't be bullied by me at one point, something which still haunts me now. I phoned my mum and explained the situation through tears and a panic attack. We talked about it for ages, and she assured me that I definitely wouldn't have said anything inappropriate, because I never do online. After the call, I got her to watch the video, and she assured me again that there really wasn't anything to criticise in it, that everything I'd said was truthful and honest and heartfelt, and she couldn't understand my therapist's reaction to it. I told very few others about it, because I was so worried I'd be criticised, and I didn't want to feel any more shame than I already did. By the following week's session, I was completely tied up in conflicting feelings and thoughts, and I had no idea how to move forwards at all. I partly wanted to confront her and explain how it had made me feel, that I felt completely violated and intruded upon, and that it was totally unprofessional to have brought her feelings to me rather than to her supervisor. But I also desperately wanted her to help me get better, and I didn't want to risk losing that when I'd just fought so hard to save it. I decided I'd only talk about it if she did. In the next session she did bring it up. I don't remember when, but it was done very much on her terms. She explained that she'd had some time to think about it and calm down, and that in hindsight she should have asked me before watching it, and that she was sorry that she hadn't. She said she felt much better about it all, and felt like we had worked our way through the rupture well and could now move on. This just shut down any response I had, because it felt like I was just going to rake over old ground. I didn't want to sound like I was holding grudges or trying to make her feel bad, and it was clear to me that she had absolutely no idea of the impact it had had on me. So I simply said that if she'd have asked, I'd have sent it to her, that I'd watched it back and I didn't criticise her or blame her for me feeling worse, and that I'd tried to be very clear in our sessions about how bad I was feeling, and I thought her experiencing the countertransference had made it obvious just how much I was suffering. She moved us on, and that was that. It was only ever talked about in a jokey way by her after that, as if it had been a storm in a teacup. I've ummed and ahed for the last year about whether to post anything about this, for numerous reasons, including feeling utterly embarrassed and ashamed, being worried I'd receive backlash from her, or general criticism from anyone watching this who agrees with her rather than me. I've not felt strong enough to share about this because the few people I've spoken to about it in my personal life have had quite different stances about where the biggest problems lie, and therefore I've been very confused about exactly what I should and shouldn't be upset or angry about. The whole thing has been an absolute minefield for me and has been a huge source of stress ever since it happened. The thing that swung it for me, and is the reason I'm posting this, is that I was part of some group work recently, and I mentioned my experience within the context of the online harms work I was participating in, and someone else said this had happened to them. I know this happens to people. I know various NHS trusts follow their patients' social media channels and have used the contents of those against them or as evidence for them to be discharged, and it's always been a personal worry of mine that my trust might do that to me. But to be reminded that this happens to people, including in private practice, and that it's such a source of pain and shame to have our privacy invaded like that, made me think that as I have this platform, I should use it to tell people that this happens, because most of society will have no idea and would never even think of it. I also wanted to speak up to say to those of you who this has happened to, me too. I've spent 18 months beating myself up about it, wondering what I could have done differently, how I could have avoided this, thinking that I, of all people, someone with a psychology degree who wants to train as a therapist, should have seen the red flags that kept popping up in sessions long before and long after this intrusion happened. I felt so utterly stupid and embarrassed, and worst of all, it took away one of the very few coping strategies I have, which is vlogging and blogging. Being able to get all of the mess of thoughts and worries and rants and confusion out of my head and out into the ether, where people watch or read and understand a little more, or nod in agreement, or whatever it may be. But I stopped doing all of that because I lost my trust in myself. I lost my confidence, and I no longer felt safe to share my experiences or to know that I was doing it in the right way for me. People who followed me for a while will know that I hold myself to very high standards when it comes to sharing publicly online. I will never identify anyone unless I have their permission, and this often means I have to skirt around issues or not speak about them at all, because there's no way of explaining those situations without identifying or near enough identifying the people involved. And regardless of how cathartic it would be for me, I will never encroach on someone's privacy or their right to a private life, even when their actions have directly harmed me. Those rules are partly why this hit me so hard, because I would never, ever have shared anything that I thought could possibly upset someone, and I thought she knew me well enough by then to know that. I think I often come across as someone who has it quite together, who's competent and confident and able to stick up for themselves in a fight. And while that's sometimes true, it's easy to see that facade and not realise how badly things affect me and how long they impact my life for. This absolutely knocked me for six, and it's been very hard having to admit that and vaguely try to explain my absence on my blog and my lack of updates when I resumed posting again. It's felt like such an elephant in the room, and I'm absolutely terrible with that. I just want to talk about the elephant and then move on, which is what I'm hoping this vlog will do, because it's been a really long time coming. I have no idea what other people watching this will think or how they think they'd react if it happened to them. But I hope that in sharing this, those of you that it's happened to will feel seen and a little less alone. And for those who it hasn't, I hope it's made you think and maybe made you aware of an issue that most of us don't even consider until it happens to us. I changed therapists some months after this and have been working with my new therapist for a year now, and it's taken me all this time to pluck up the courage to share this here. In fact, I was so scared that it was going to happen all over again that it took me 3 months to even tell her about what happened, because I was so worried that she'd agree with my last therapist, and I didn't know how to cope with that. In the end, it was driving me so nuts having it all swirling round in my head that I brought it up right at the end of the session. I can't tell you what a relief it was when she responded completely differently and told me how unreasonable her reaction had been and that I had grounds for a complaint. I've been given explicit permission to talk about whatever I like about our sessions online. Not that I have any intention of doing that, but knowing that I'm trusted and that hopefully someday soon this online space will feel safe again for me is a huge gift. If any therapists are watching this, or any healthcare providers generally, please consider your actions and requests when dealing with people like me. I have very few coping strategies, and my new therapist was really sad when she saw what support I'd lost by feeling unable to post here. With my permission, she watched my videos and saw the lovely comments I got from people and could see that this was a space for me to share and get things out of my head. And she's been encouraging me ever since February to reclaim it and do what I needed to in order to be able to post again. It probably sounds really dramatic and like I've completely overreacted to the whole thing, but when your world is as small as mine often is, things seem really big. And when you overanalyze everything in order to make sure that you behave in all of the right ways, being told you've got it really wrong by a person you massively respect in a position of power over you is genuinely soul-destroying, at least for me. It's hard to know how this could have panned out differently, because if she'd have asked me to send her the video, I would have. I had no problem with its content. What should have happened is she should have taken the issue to supervision rather than ringing me in a panic and making accusations that ultimately completely broke down our relationship. I didn't feel able to be open or fully honest after that phone call because I didn't feel able to trust her or my own instincts, and I'm still trying to build that back up now, 18 months on. I'm hoping that in sharing this, I can stop it from swirling around my head quite so much. I'm hoping that I can stop feeling so embarrassed and ashamed, And I'm hoping that I can move on from this and start to share things here again, because I really miss posting. I really miss interacting with all of you, and I'm going through some pretty tough stuff with my health right now, and it's not helping that I have very few places to share that at the moment. So I hope I'll be back sooner rather than later with a new video of some sort. And if you got this far through, thank you so much. I definitely won't be doing scripted videos again. This couldn't be less me if it tried. But thank you so much for watching, and hopefully see you soon. Bye.